Jack, if you could give us some factual things that you think are important with regards to this, we'd appreciate that.
I am not going to comment on any of the political aspects of it, whether we need an ordinance or, whether you can do this by ordinance or not, whether about the PA consulting cover-up or the 3 weeks that it took the city council to run this through, or the lack of the IEA survey that's charter mandated that was due over 14 months ago. I'm going to focus more on the economics of the situation. First and foremost, our rates are going to get hammered. As DWP said in their October 22nd report, solar power costs 35 to 45 cents per kilowatt hour versus, which is about 3 to 4 times the average rate that we're paying right now. So that's probably one area of increase. The second area of increase, or another point here, is that DWP has been talking about they need to own these facilities. DWP in the past has benefited from owning their own generating facilities. That is indeed the case. However, this is very different. What we're talking about, what we've talked about in the past, is huge generating capacity. Generating plants, costing billions of dollars. I mean, they're big monster utility plants. Here, what we're talking about is very dispersed over very many number of rooftops. It's just not going to be in one particular place. So whether DWP really needs to own this because of the capital concentration is a question that I do have. Another point to be made is one of the things we've seen with Southern California Edison, in particular, with Southern California Edison, is that they have relied on third-party providers, other people outside of the Edison empire that come in and actually construct and manufacture and even own these facilities. The key there is getting green power. The key is not owning the green power. The key is getting it. In terms of the solar power, I mentioned that solar power is obviously more expensive than regular power we have. This is not, we are not against green power. We all recognize that there are benefits, whether it's whether it's the environment or whether it's the balance of payments, cleaner air, global warming. Take your choice. One of the issues that we have is the way this thing is structured is that it is going to be DWP solely doing this, and that means DWP work crews. DWP work crews are notoriously inefficient. For example, I think it was last spring, they compared DWP work crews to private work crews with regards to the water trunk lines. DWP work crews were twice as expensive and took twice as long. Now, when we get into this project, we're talking about $3.6 billion. That's the number that was used by PA Consulting in the covered-up report that was issued to the City Council. That $3.6 billion differs significantly from the numbers that General Manager Nahai used, which were $1 billion to $1.5 billion. One of the major reasons probably in there is the issues of the tax credits. And we haven't vetted those tax credits and whether they're available and under what terms and who would buy them, recognizing that the major buyers of tax credits in the past have been financial institutions such as banks, Lehman Brothers, Bear Stearns. I mean, it's just they're just not going to be used. They're not going to. The market there is questionable. But on a gross basis, before tax credits, the PA Consulting people, who by the way have been going through DWP's books for the last 6 months, they're part of $1 million taxpayer-funded consulting assignment relating to the IEA survey. So they're very knowledgeable, or I would think they would. I hope they are very knowledgeable about the affairs of DWP. They said it would cost $3.6 billion and probably much more. Why much more? One is they maintain that DWP doesn't have the managerial experience. It doesn't have the engineering experience. It doesn't have the planning experience. Can DWP actually handle a $3.6 billion project of this size and this magnitude? And they seem to have questioned that. The second area that so you're at 3.6 million, and then they say and would cost much more. I think another thing that we need to consider in this is how much the DWP work crews are going to cost us. If you figure that a third of the money here is going to be for labor, that would be $1.2 billion, And if the work crew experience is typical of what goes on, we're talking about another $1.2 billion here added to that cost. That's going to be costs that the ratepayers are going to pay. That's our burden. And that would probably, work out to about $120 million a year just on your rate base for that extra. We're also talking about a 30% bid preference. If the companies that we're procuring materials from are located in the county of Los Angeles, they get up to a 30% bid preference. If the 30% bid preference is applied to that, to the $2.4 million that is purchased portion of it, that's $750 million. So under those two numbers, which again I admit are back of the envelope numbers, we're talking about $2 billion extra that the ratepayers are going to have to foot. That would probably turn it into, as opposed to a $3.6 billion $5.6 billion into a $5.6 billion program. That's real money, folks. The $5.6 billion, or let's say $5 billion, that just in financing costs alone, assuming a 20-year life, assuming no operational and maintenance costs, would be $450 to $500 million a year extra cost over and above of what we're paying now. That's just financing, and that assumes an interest rate of 5%. The latest interest rate they did was, I think, 5.28, not including underwriting fees and stuff like that. So, and then you have to amortize that debt over a period of time, and assuming a continual flow of cash out, you're talking $450 to $500 million a year. That's about a 20% increase in what our rates are now, just for this alone, and it's only going to be for about 3 or 4% of our power base. So we're really talking about, we're really going to get hammered. I think that's about it. The basic thing is $3.6 billion and much more, and we're going to pay for it. Plus just even if we had third-party contractors, it's still going to cost a lot. It's still going to cost you 35 to 45 cents a kilowatt.